They didn't inherit it. They didn't win it. They didn't stumble into it. They built it from nothing. And the scariest part? Most of them aren't smarter than you. They don't work longer hours than you. They don't have better luck than you. What they have is a different mind, a different operating system running underneath everything they do. And once you see it, once you actually understand the psychology, you will never look at wealth, success, or money the same way again.
In 1973, a 23-year-old named Howard Schultz was growing up in a Brooklyn housing project, watching his father, a truck driver, get fired without benefits after breaking his ankle on the job. No insurance, no severance. Just gone. That moment didn't break Howard. It installed something in him. A rage. A clarity. A refusal to be discarded. Years later, he walked into a small coffee company in Seattle called Starbucks, which at the time just sold coffee beans. He had a vision they didn't want, so he left, raised money from 242 investors, 217 of whom said no, built his own coffee shop chain, came back, bought Starbucks, and turned it into a $100 billion empire. Was Howard Schultz a genius? Not particularly. Was he the hardest worker alive? Probably not. But his psychology, that was different. That was built different, forged in a Brooklyn housing project and a broken father on a kitchen floor. And that's exactly what we're exploring today. The 7 psychological traits that separate people who build wealth from zero from everyone else. Let's go. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Most people treat discomfort like a smoke alarm. The moment it goes off, they run for the exit. People who build wealth from zero, they treat discomfort like a compass. The more uncomfortable something feels, the more interested they get. In the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene writes, "Never waste the suffering you go through. It is the raw material for power." People who came from nothing understand this viscerally because they had no choice but to learn it. Think of it this way. Your comfort zone is not a safe place. It's a very slow, very pleasant dead end. The rich didn't find a shortcut around it. They just stopped minding the walk. Psychologists call this distress tolerance. The capacity to sit in painful, uncertain situations without immediately escaping. And research consistently shows it's one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. Not IQ, not talent. The ability to stay in the room when it gets hot. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men, and to imitate those who have been supreme, so that if his ability does not equal theirs, at least it will savour of it." In plain English, study the game, then play it better than anyone else. People who went from zero to wealth, Sam Walton, Oprah Winfrey, Jan Koum of WhatsApp, who grew up on food stamps, they didn't just tolerate discomfort. They made friends with it. They learned that on the other side of every uncomfortable decision was the version of their life they actually wanted.
Most people think transactionally. I do work, I get paid, I go home. That's a single move in a chess game played by someone who doesn't know there's a board. People who build real wealth think in systems and games. They're not asking, what do I get from this? They're asking, what does this position unlock 3 moves from now?
In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki talks about his rich dad teaching him to see money as a game, a set of rules that most people never bother to learn, which is why most people keep losing. His poor dad, educated, hard-working, good man, played the transaction game his whole life. His rich dad played the position game. One retired comfortable. The other built wealth. The average person reads the price tag. The wealthy person reads the footnotes. And the really wealthy person, they wrote the footnotes. This isn't cynicism. It's literacy. Understanding how money, power, and opportunity actually flow is not a character flaw. It's the prerequisite. Hold on. Quick interruption. If you're watching this, and you've never thought of money as a game with rules you can learn, that thought just cost a lot of people a lot of years. Hit the like button if this is landing differently than you expected. It helps more people find this video who genuinely need it. And if this is the kind of content you want more of, psychology, strategy, the real mechanics of wealth, subscribe right now. We drop videos like this every week. The bell notification ensures you don't miss the next one, which, if you liked this, you really don't want to miss. Back to the psychology. This next trait is the one nobody talks about. Here's something that will make you uncomfortable. Most people who build wealth from zero at some point stopped caring what other people thought of them. And I don't mean in the motivational poster way. I mean in a deep, sometimes socially alarming way. Machiavelli, again, never far from any conversation about power, wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Now, before you start worrying about your friendships, the relevant insight here isn't about fear. It's about independence from the need for validation. In Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill identified decision as one of the key traits of every wealthy person he studied. And he noted that wealthy people made decisions quickly and changed them slowly. Poor people, his words, not mine, made decisions slowly and changed them quickly based on what others thought. Your opinion of someone else's business idea lives in your head rent-free, contributing nothing. The wealthy person already launched 3 months ago. Jeff Bezos started Amazon out of a car boot, metaphorically. People told him it was ridiculous to sell books on the internet. His own colleagues at D.E. Shaw thought he was throwing away a great career. He quit, drove across the country dictating his business plan to his wife, and filed the incorporation papers in a garage. The people who told him no are not billionaires. Jeff Bezos is. The pattern isn't arrogance. It's a specific kind of selective deafness, knowing which voices to filter and which to amplify. That filter is built from clarity about what you're actually trying to build. Without that clarity, every opinion sounds important. With it, most opinions become noise.
Thomas Stanley spent decades studying American millionaires for The Millionaire Next Door, and what he found shattered nearly every assumption people had about wealth. The average American millionaire drives a used car, lives in a modest house, and shops at the same grocery stores as everyone else.
Meanwhile, and this is the part that stings, people with average incomes disproportionately buy luxury cars, designer clothes, and expensive watches. Not because they have more money, because they're buying the signal of wealth instead of the substance of it.
The Rolex doesn't make you rich. It makes you look rich, while quietly making you less rich. The person who sold it to you, however, is doing just fine. People who build wealth from zero understand, often because they had no choice, the difference between consumption and investment. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel writes that wealth is what you don't see. The cars not bought, the upgrades declined, the assets quietly compounding in the background.
This isn't about being cheap. It's about playing offense and defense at the same time. Spending on what builds. Skills, relationships, assets, knowledge, and being ruthlessly strategic about everything else. Cal Newport, in Deep Work, argues that the ability to focus deeply on one difficult thing for extended, uninterrupted periods is becoming simultaneously rarer and more valuable, and people who build wealth from nothing almost always demonstrate this trait to an extreme degree.
Elon Musk didn't build SpaceX and Tesla by being distracted. He built them by being, frankly, unsettling in his focus. Steve Jobs famously said that Apple was as much about what they said no to as what they said yes to. Warren Buffett, when asked about his success, said the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything.
Most people have a dozen priorities. Wealthy people have one. Which means, technically, the rest of us don't have priorities at all. We have a to-do list with delusions of grandeur.
Machiavelli understood this too. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by strategy. Focus is strategy. Every hour spent on the wrong thing is an hour not spent on the right one. And wealthy people, especially those who built from zero, develop an almost ruthless ability to identify the right thing and protect that time like their financial life depends on it. Because it does.
Here is the Machiavelli quote I want you to carry with you after this video. Entrepreneurs are simply those who understand that there is little difference between obstacle and opportunity, and are able to turn both to their advantage.
Every self-made wealthy person has a failure story. Not a small one. A spectacular, humiliating, this is over kind of failure story.
Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He went bankrupt before building Disneyland. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job and told she was unfit for TV. Richard Branson dropped out of school at 16. His headmaster told him he'd either end up in prison or become a millionaire. He probably told that story at every Christmas party for 30 years. Failure, for most people, is a full stop. For wealthy people, it's a comma. Sometimes a very expensive comma, but a comma nonetheless.
In Mindset, Carol Dweck's foundational research on fixed versus growth mindsets shows exactly why this is. People with fixed mindsets interpret failure as evidence of who they are. People with growth mindsets interpret failure as evidence of what they haven't learned yet. Wealthy people, almost universally, operate from growth mindset, especially early in their journey, when failure is most frequent and most expensive. The practical result of this? They iterate faster, they recover faster, and they accumulate learning, real hard-won scar tissue learning, at a rate that compounds just like financial interest. Every failure becomes a data point. Every rejection becomes market research. Every disaster becomes a chapter in the book they'll eventually write, probably called something like What the Bank Didn't Know. And now we get to the one, the psychological trait that underlies every other one on this list, the master key. People who build wealth from nothing understand deeply, intuitively, practically, the concept of leverage, and they apply it to everything. Archimedes famously said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." Wealthy people heard that and thought, finally, someone gets it. What is leverage? It's using something small to create something disproportionately large. Financial leverage is borrowing capital to invest. Business leverage is building systems that work without you. Knowledge leverage is learning something once and applying it 1,000 times. Network leverage is knowing one person who knows 100 others. In the Almanac of Naval Ravikant writes, "Arm yourself with specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. If you do this, wealth will find you." The specific insight he adds is that code and media are permissionless leverage. You can write software that runs while you sleep. You can create content that reaches millions while you're eating lunch. This is why this is the greatest era in human history, to build wealth from zero. Your great-grandparents needed a factory. Your grandparents needed a shop. Your parents needed a job. You need a laptop and something worth saying. The playing field didn't level. It tilted. Machiavelli, one last time. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. And what he means, in wealth terms, is that you must understand and command the forces available to you. Capital, time, people, systems, code, ideas. The wealthy don't work harder than everyone else. They work with more leverage than everyone else. That's the whole game. That's always been the whole game. Remember Howard Schultz, the kid from the Brooklyn housing project? He had every trait we talked about today. He was comfortable with discomfort. He'd grown up in it. He thought in games. He saw what Starbucks could become before Starbucks did. He didn't need approval. He left, built his own company, and came back on his terms. He invested in the asset, not the appearance. He had clarity. It was always about the experience, not just the coffee. He turned failure into data. 217 rejections before he raised his first round. And he understood leverage. He wasn't selling coffee.
He was building the third place between home and work, and then franchising that idea globally.
He didn't have a different life. He had a different mind. And the mind, as it turns out, is the only starting capital that actually matters.
Okay. 7 traits, 8 book citations, 1 very quotable Italian political philosopher from the 1500s who somehow predicted Silicon Valley. Here's what I want from you before we close. Go to the comments right now and write the number of the trait you most need to work on. Just the number. 1 through 7. That's it. I'm going to read every single one. Because I'm curious. Because it matters. And because sometimes just naming the thing out loud is the first step toward actually changing it.
And if this video gave you something, a new frame, a new idea, a quote you'll think about for a week, share it with one person. Not because it helps the algorithm, because the person you share it with might be sitting exactly where Howard Schultz was sitting in 1987, wondering if their idea is stupid, wondering if the next rejection is the last one they can take. Show them they're not alone.
Filthy rich from zero isn't an accident. It isn't luck, mostly. It isn't a secret school that some people go to and others don't. It's a psychology. A set of mental habits forged over time, applied consistently, compounding quietly in the background of everything they do. Discomfort as compass. Games, not transactions. Selective deafness to the wrong voices. Assets over appearances. Ruthless focus. Failure as data. And leverage. Always leverage on everything. The books are all there, waiting for you.
Start with 1. The one that makes you slightly uncomfortable. That's the right one. And if you want more of this, psychology, strategy, the real mechanics of how wealth and power actually work, then subscribe to this channel. We'll be here every week, pulling back the curtain on the things that actually matter. No fluff, no hype, just ideas worth your time. I'll see you in the next one.